don't think it's going to be a boring fight.
No, I don't.
I really don't. I think it'll be well. I think it'll be points deducted. I think there may be knockdowns.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a cracking fight.
I think a classic, yeah. Thanks for tuning in to our Fury versus Whyte live preview show. Please be aware there will be some language that viewers may find offensive. Sit back and enjoy the show. Well, evening everybody. We're at the fabulous Sports Bar and Grill here in Marylebone for our Fury Whyte Fight Night preview presented by We Love Sport. Really appreciate you all coming down, especially on a weeknight. I know most of you are here for Carl. If you don't know who I am, my name's Chris Lloyd. Yes, let's hear it for Carl Frampton, everybody.
I thought that round of applause for you.
What, for me? No, definitely not for me. There was one person at the back cheering for me. Thanks, Mum. Carl and I have obviously known each other for about 3 or 4 years now. I think this is the first time we've actually worked together since pre-pandemic, isn't it, for the podcast?
Yeah, we had the podcast going, which was going pretty well.
Hands up, did anyone watch the podcast out of interest?
Yeah.
Oh, that's everyone. Brilliant. Great stuff.
I enjoyed it. I really,
it, yeah.
really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was disappointed at the end, but it's good to be back alongside your son.
Yeah. First time we met was a bit hairy, wasn't it? Funnily enough, I used to be a camera op, and I got drafted in by Frank Warren to do a couple of Carl's promos. The first one I ever did was Nonito Donaire, so I can remember being on the roof of the Europa, freezing cold. And then I think the second time we were doing some work with one of your sponsors at Fergal O'Brien's horse yard out in Cheltenham, wasn't it, that way?
Yeah, and let me just tell a story. Please. So at this point, Chris didn't know. So we went to a stable of like top quality racehorses. Chris didn't know he was allergic to horses.
But like 11 out of 10 allergic as well.
No, I mean, we got there, I seen him. He started going. Are you all right, mate? Yeah, I'm okay.
But it built over like an hour and a half.
Like an hour and a half, 90 minutes. His face swole up, his ears went big, like fucking Nutty Professor type stuff. But he almost, like you were close to death at one point, weren't you?
Yeah. You were there, weren't you? Were you there, Ben? Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was. I remember feeling my throat sort of doing that and thinking, well, I've got to film all of this, and you're obviously quite an important person at the time, and I just thought I can't really afford to not. Like, sorry everyone, I'm off. Like I'm here to film the whole day. Is the whole point of it. And at one point you looked at me and you went, "You all right, son?" And I went, "I'm actually not, to be honest." And luckily they got some antihistamine, and about an hour later we were back on the horse. But yeah, that was a mad time. So we've come a long way. Obviously, you have since retired. 2-weight world champion, Ireland's greatest in my opinion. Thank you. Yes! We say 50 quid.
Yeah.
And obviously now happily retired. I've got to be honest though, when you become friends with fighters, it's the age-old sort of concern in boxing when fighters retire that, you know, are they going to be okay? And I know a lot of fighters aren't in the position you're in because you retired with money in the bank, all the accolades you could have possibly wanted to achieve, a lovely family, wife, kids, everything that can be sort of set up for you to have a successful and happy retirement. But we've seen a number of fighters over the years fall off the wagon. And I was kind of hoping, right, see where he is in 6 months. But you seem to really have enjoyed yourself.
Oh yeah, look, I'm doing my stuff with BT and bits and pieces with 5 Live as well.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying it, and I keep getting asked the question, probably on a daily basis, do you miss boxing? Fighting really is the question. Do I miss fighting? And I don't. I don't miss boxing because I'm still involved and I'm working, and I'm at shows, and I'm doing the big show, Whyte and Fury, that we're here to talk about. So it's keeping me involved, and to be honest, I was probably looking out the last couple of years, but the opportunity, Top Rank came along, and the opportunity to fight them, try to become a 3-weight world champion, it was just too good to turn down, and I thought I'll have a blast at it. I'm glad I did, because I think maybe if I didn't, it could have been one of them ones when you're 37, you think about making a comeback.
Yeah.
And I just know I'm not good enough to compete with the top guys anymore, so I'm happy enough to do what I'm doing.
So we were obviously commentating on the same fight weekend before last, Josh Warrington and Kiko Martinez. Of course, you fought both of them, beat Martinez twice, obviously in Fight of the Year against Warrington. 2018 was that, I think?
Yeah.
And I remember looking across at you at the desk thinking, well, Kiko's obviously come back against the odds. And Herring was, of course, a different prospect because it turned out he was the height of Shaquille O'Neal in the end. But do you think you could have, do you think, is there something in the back of your head thought, oh, could have had Kiko that night? Do you think you could have still done it?
No. And I wouldn't be disrespectful to say, even think about it, because I don't think so. And do you know what? When he beat Kid Galahad, I was delighted because, well, for a couple of reasons. I don't really like Kid Galahad.
He's all right, actually. He's in person. He's all right.
Well, he's all right, but he's
been a bit of
he's a proven drugs cheat. So I suppose he's all right, but I'm saying that he was caught. So,
yeah, that's fine. It's not libelous. It's fine. We don't have to take it out.
I was just worried. I was saying something I shouldn't have been saying there, but no, it's fact.
Yeah.
So but I really like Kiko, and I have a lot of respect for him. And obviously we fought each other a couple of times, and you just gain a respect for someone when you do fight them. And I actually went for a run the day after that fight, and I thought, if Kiko was a world champion now, I might still imagine I got the call up to fight Kiko for a mandatory or something like that.
Or someone made a massive offer out of the blue.
But I went for a run and I'd done 4 miles and I was sore for a week after it. So I thought, nah, it's not for me anymore.
It's all over,
yeah.
Well, mate, a fantastic career, and congratulations on your retirement. It's really nice getting little bits of applause. We never had this in the podcast, did we? Yeah, thanks. We did talk about taking the podcast on tour, didn't we? I think just before the pandemic hit, and then it was a weird time. I hope everyone's kind of come out of it as unscathed as possible. But we of course were locked down in the kind of match room. I was locked in the match room bubble for a good, must have been 8 to 12 months. And for me, I always look at all the different things that we experienced in that time. It was a very close group of about 50 people. Not many people would have got to experience that. And the one thing that does stick out for me was the Dillian Whyte and Alexander Povetkin fight, because, when Eddie had the kind of harebrained idea of, bringing boxing to his back garden, A, you've got to have a back garden the size of Eddie's to even contemplate something like that. And B, you've got to have, I suppose, a bit of balls about you to want to take the risk and to put on fights, not only fights, but of that magnitude. And I thought we'd have some decent fights. I didn't think we'd get Whyte and Povetkin.
Yeah.
And obviously that kind of is part.
It's a huge fight for a back garden,
yeah,
really.
But there was 80 people there.
There was a lot of big fights actually when Eddie done that, and you have to give him credit for doing so. It was. It was a risk, I suppose, for him, but I was at 1 or 2 of the events, and they were really good, really well run and exciting and good fights, which is important. And they needed to be good fights in them sort of situations. But to be able to have Dillian Whyte and Alexander Povetkin, 2 of the biggest names in heavyweight boxing at the time, both of them were probably at that time of the fight top 5 contenders. Yep. Most people would have them in their top 5, and it was, heavyweights get paid a lot of money. I suppose it was a risk, but it was a big fight, and obviously it didn't pay off the first time when Povetkin won out of the blue.
And what a moment that was as well.
Yeah, it was huge. And the thing is with Povetkin, these Russian and Eastern Bloc fighters, a lot of them are so well schooled, and their technique is perfect. Like, they just drill things over and over and over again. And the shot that he knocked Dillian Whyte out with, you could just see that was something that he's hit a bag. He's hit the bag with the same combination so many times. It was like the most perfect shot you'll see. But obviously Dillian got him in the rematch, and that was it. Yeah,
it was an amazing sort of 6 months. I can remember that night when Whyte hit the canvas, the whole place normally would erupt. I remember Froch Groves too at Wembley Stadium, where of course Fury Whyte will be in a couple of weeks' time. Just when that right hand landed from Froch, the whole place just went off. And the same with Joshua and Klitschko. For Whyte, it was a strange sensation to see a fighter get hit with probably the best punch they're ever going to get caught with, and then the whole place go completely silent. It was like a vacuum. Of course, you're outdoors, there's no atmosphere at all. And then about 2 hours later, of course, we've all gone back to the compound, and by the compound I mean the Holiday Inn in Brentwood, and there was a small communal sort of patioed area outside, and I'd just gone outside to see who was floating around, and Whyte was standing there on his own, and I kind of didn't expect to see him. I thought maybe he'd gone to hospital to get checked out, and he was there on his phone, and I don't know him particularly well, and I just sort of, you know, you kind of stop in front of someone and you feel like you've got to say something. I said, "Oh, really sorry, are you all right?" And he went, "Oh, I will be, but yeah, not at the moment." And I thought, when I think about it now, it reminded me of obviously the moments that you had that we captured on film. I know they're not the moments that you want to relive over and over, but after the Herring fight, the only fight you kind of got stopped in, you know the pain of that and how emotionally difficult that can be. And yeah, I can remember a couple of days later when Umar had interviewed Frank Warren on IFL, and he was kind of making light of it, and he made a little song about it and stuff. And we kind of come on to the build-up we have now, which has been characterised really by almost an absence of hype and build-up, because Whyte has refused to take part. And I know Warren's being particularly irritated by that, and he said, well, why won't he take part and do this and do that? But you know yourself as a fighter, as a proud fighter, if you've been stopped and woken up and someone had kind of made fun of it, that's not the sort of thing you would forget in a hurry, is it?
No, it's not. But I still feel like he should have an involvement in the fight. And obviously there's been discussions and debates on 5 Live and Talksport and everything else about, and Frank and Dillian's lawyer, and they're having these heated arguments and stuff. But I don't know what the contract says, but according to Frank, it's saying you need to be involved and help.
It's like reasonable promotion or whatever it is. Yeah.
So I just feel like he should. If I'm being honest, I feel like it's probably going to be beneficial to him as well. It's a huge fight. It's a massive fight, and I feel like Dillian Whyte, I think he's probably made the decision. I'm not sure, but I feel like he may be sitting regretting the route of action that he's taken, and he's not really said anything. The lawyer, for me, that he's got involved, first of all, he's just been on the radio and TV too much for a lawyer. You know, He wants to hear himself talk. Like, just deal with things behind the scenes. Like, you don't need to tell the whole world about it. Just go about your own business as a legal representative of someone. It's all a bit weird. But I would like to see him be a bit involved. But we're very, very close to the fight, and it doesn't look like we're going to get anything from Dillian Whyte until the weigh-in, really.
Yeah, and he will obviously. I had a few people actually asking and seeing people talk, saying, well, he's a heavyweight. Does he actually have to weigh in? And obviously he does contractually. I had a look at the WBC rules because I'm a sadder, and it says it's got kind of like they do all the medicals and stuff on that day, and you've got to be on the scale. So he'll have to do that. But it'd be very interesting to see if he does a face-off.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, it will be, and I think that he's a hothead, isn't he, Dillian Whyte? Like he's got a man who's shown that he's full of passion at times. So I think he may go in to the weigh-in and that the whole kind of that situation around the weigh-in and interviews or whatever. He may go into it thinking, I'm just going to weigh in and walk away here. But he could be goaded into doing something.
I feel like part of it might be energy saving, because Fury is the master of mind games, and we've seen him get inside the head of Vladimir Klitschko. He was bang inside David Hayes' head, even though the fight never materialised. And of course, Deontay Wilder, he messed him up before they'd even really got down to the fight. And I think that's a big part of what he does. It's
whatever way you look at it, really. Some people are saying it's a master stroke from Dillian Whyte to just to remain silent and not take the bait to Fury. Other people are saying that he needs to be involved. Other people are saying, he's no balls, which is bullshit because he's plenty of them. I don't know. It depends who you're speaking to. You'll get a different opinion. But I'd just like to see him be involved in this fight. I'm a boxing fan. I love big fights, but I like the build up to fights too.
What was it like when you were involved with the Quigg fight? Because I think you've always been someone that's been liked, generally speaking, by a lot of other fighters and the public. So you haven't had a lot of needle. The Nair fight, it was completely respectful. Warrington, Leo Santa Cruz. But in the Quigg fight, there was definitely a different energy. What does that change in terms of your approach to the fight?
It didn't change my approach to the fight.
Did it make you feel different?
No. And I had these you get angry in certain situations and annoyed, but I 5 minutes later, I'm all right. And
Like when they pulled out the big check and stuff, or
yeah, that annoyed me for a while, the
Yeah.
big check. But I just put, I put my point of view across, and the big check said, was it £1 million?
Yeah, £1 million, yeah.
£1 million. But I knew, without blowing smoke up my own arse, that the fight was worth more than £1 million.
Yeah, yeah.
And turned out to be right.
Yeah.
So, people see, Frampton's no balls, he's not taking £1 million, but that would have been me being silly, just jumping. So, there's situations where you get angry and annoyed at things, but 5 minutes later, I feel like I'm level-headed enough to just forget about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you are, but the guys that we're talking about for the fight in a couple of weeks' time are a different kettle of fish, both quite hot-headed. But you're right in that when you look back at all the kind of great domestic grudge matches, when you're thinking about, I don't know, Ben Eubank, or more recently, like Groves to Gale, Froch Groves, White, Chisora, AJ White, all big fights that had a lot of needle and a lot of spice. And I guess recently, talking about even the Savannah Marshall and Caressa Shields fight, I know it's not domestic, but when you've got that element of spice and genuine hatred there, and you can see it in those people's eyes, there's something about that just makes you want to engage in the fight. And I think you're right, if they had spent a little bit more time in the same room together, we'd probably have a few more talking points, rather than why his lawyer and Frank Warren shouting at each other on TalkSport.
Yeah, that's all I've seen really, but I think that it's going to be, it's sold out a lot quicker than I expected the fight to sell out. I always thought that it probably would eventually, but I didn't think it would sell out as quick as it did. There's going to be a lot of people watching it on TV. I think if Whyte was involved in it and helping to promote it a bit more, maybe be more people watching it. But I think we're still a few weeks away. Something will happen. It'll not be completely quiet the whole way up to the fight, I don't think.
I spoke to Coogan Cassius this morning, and he said, I know there's been a lot of talk about the absence of a build-up, but you have to remember a lot of big fights, the big sort of push comes in fight week for every big fight, and the schedule's busy.
It's the first week. It's the first week the fight's announced, and the last week, the week leading into the fight. In the middle, not a lot goes on.
So essentially, 9 or 10 days from now, everyone will be talking about it all week, regardless of whether we've heard from Dillian Whyte or not, and it will be the only thing that gets talked about until Saturday night at midnight or whatever time the fight finishes. Let's talk about the fight. I know you obviously spent a fair bit of time around Big Tyson over the years. You've seen him. He has to be a big favourite going into the fight.
Yeah, I think he does. I have him as a big favourite going into the fight. I think that anything can really happen, as we've seen so many times in the heavyweight division, that there's, guys can come from behind and land shots that knock favourites out.
Yeah.
Most recent one I can think of is AJ Ruiz.
Yep.
What a shock that was to everybody. But that can happen because they're big men, and they can't just eat punches like some of the lighter guys can do. If you get hit clean with a big man, a good shot, a lot of the time you're going to be hurt by it. So Whyte has a chance because he's a puncher and he's a big guy and he's brave and he's game and he's dirty. And he'll need all that in the fight, but I just feel like Fury is the favourite, should be the favourite, and I feel like if you wanted to build another heavyweight fighter for Fury to look good against,
you think that's him?
You'd build Derek Chisora.
Yeah, correct.
But Dillian Whyte is better than Derek Chisora, but similar attributes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think Fury will win the fight and. Yeah, win it comfortably.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I'm trying to prep for a fight week, if I want to know, obviously you have the eye test, you watch fights and you look at styles and techniques and you try and look at which fights have maybe matched up stylistically before to give yourself an idea of how a fight might play out. But the most insightful it ever gets is when you speak to people you trust who've actually been in and sparred with both fighters, and not often you can find that, but there are 2 or 3 people, I won't name them, but you can probably work out roughly who they are, who I've spoken to in the last couple of weeks about sparring both guys. And the most interesting thing is all 3 of them are on the fence in the fight. Now, I would have completely been with you up until I started hearing things like that, and it makes you think sometimes, even when a fighter, and I think most people would agree Fury's a level above, or certainly on paper a level above Dillian Whyte, sometimes fighters have a kryptonite style. Ali had Ken Norton, even though on paper Norton was nowhere near as good as Ali. Those 3 fights are about as close as you could have got. And there's obviously something in their sparring sessions that they've shared together where Fury's been down a couple of times. We know that's kind of public information now. And having spoken to...
Well, that depends who you speak to, because Fury will deny that.
He will, but I know someone that watched the sparring.
Oh, right, okay.
So it's that's kind of, that has happened, and they both said it was a really, really tough spar for both guys, not a lot to pick between them. And even though it's hard to picture that in a fight, from all the information, when you speak to people, it leads me to the conclusion that this is probably going to be a lot closer maybe than the odds suggest.
It wouldn't surprise me. It really wouldn't surprise me. But I haven't been speaking to people who've sparred both guys, so I don't. Yeah. So I don't have that opinion. You know what I mean? So I'm just seeing it as what I've seen in previous fights.
Yeah.
And wouldn't surprise me if Dillian Whyte wins the fight, because he's a big guy. But I expect Fury to win it, and win it quite comfortably.
Because the version of Fury that fought Vladimir Klitschko 2015, when you watch that back, he's not as fleet-footed as he was then, because
things change over time, and that's an art. So he won that fight, Fury, and I remember I was actually with a group of friends. Paddy Barnes was there, a load of our friends and our wives and girlfriends watching that fight, and Fury was good in the fight, and he won the fight, but as time elapses, people have that as a complete boxing lesson. The way it wasn't. It was
about 6 or 7 jabs landed per round.
Yeah, it was.
And he kind of landed 3 or 4 of them versus 1 or 2.
Yeah, it was a closer fight than people think.
You would kind of remember, yeah, right.
And remember it, and just because of times past and how it's been portrayed in the media and stuff. But he did that. Like he went to Germany and beat one of the maybe the longest reigning heavyweight champion there's ever been.
Yes.
Yeah,
been.
And he went and done that. He done that. He went to America and took on the biggest punching heavyweight possibly there's ever been in Deontay Wilder. Outboxed him the first fight and got a draw, and then bulldozed him the next 2 fights. Like, unbelievable what he's done. Unbelievable. And no one knew he had that in him. That style in the second and third fight with Wilder. Who knew he had that in him? Well, no one knew that. Really.
No. And I wonder whether that adaptation is because the fleet-footedness is just not quite there. And again, probably because he was 27 stone for the best part of 2 years when he was out, and that takes its toll on your knees and your ankles and everything else. Yeah. So when you come back, eventually that kind of catches up with you. And when you watch him now, he's a brilliant fighter and he's still quick for the size of the man, but when you look at the 2015 performance against Klitschko and how much he moved,
I suppose he's changed.
He's had to adapt, hasn't
he? But you look like fighter. You look at fighters over the year, like even guys like.
Well, look at Ali in his second iteration. What he had to do when he lost his legs.
Well, even more recent, Floyd Mayweather. Who was this kind of game, really exciting fighter, turned into an unbelievable fighter, but turned in. Bit boring sometimes to watch his style. Really defensive,
genius,
defensive master, genius, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. But he changed his style as he got a bit older. Bernard Hopkins changed his style as he got older. So people do that, but I just still think that Fury has enough about him, and it's like it's almost like it's baffling how he can actually. I know maybe the movement isn't what it used to be, but it's baffling how he was ever able to move like that. Like the size and shape of him, he doesn't look like he has any ounce of athleticism in his body.
No.
But he can dance around like a welterweight.
Do you remember? Does everyone remember seeing the footage of the undersole of his feet after the Klitschko fight? Does anyone remember seeing that?
Yeah.
Took the socks off in the changing room, and it was like one. Sorry to be gross if you're eating tortilla chips, but like one big. What do you call it? Blister that come right the way off the bottom of both his feet. When you're 19, it was horrendous, wasn't it? But I remember thinking then, looking at it, thinking you can't put in that performance every single time because it takes too much out of it.
But even that fight, and we've seen it in the Wilder fights where he got up and he looked like he was knocked out. That shows the balls that he has.
Yeah.
That's gotta be so fucking sore. When you're moving around the ring and your feet are bleeding, and you've got this other big unit in Klitschko on you trying to knock you out, and you're still having to think, I still have to move, I can't stand and trade with this guy. That's got to be mentally, you've got to be a mentally very strong person to do that. And then obviously we've seen what he's done with the Wilder fights, it looked like he was knocked out in that fight. The one where his eyes were closed on the ground, he got back up and won the rest of the round. Like his mental strength is, it's incredible.
It's really interesting. It's something that he does that's quite subtle, but I think it's quite important, especially for a tall heavyweight. When he does get knocked down, and obviously you never know when you're going to get knocked down, it happens pretty quickly. So a lot of your reactions are instinct, but he's always so calm on the floor. He never rushes to get up. And the one I think of is our mate Big Pricey, who I think one of the things that if he could have had his time again, just take your time when you hit the deck. Always tried to get up a bit too quickly, and being 6'8", 6'9", you know, got a lot of kind of a high centre of gravity to try and hold on to. And I think Fury, he uses every bit of the 7-8 seconds that he's got to recover. And you know, when he has been down, he's taken his time. I think it's been a big part of why he's managed to.
Yeah, it has. But he's clever, like he really is, and he's worked his way through different types of opponents and different styles. And you're right, I suppose, in the last few fights, he's maybe planted his feet a bit more, maybe because he's had to. I never actually thought about that. I just thought that was a new thing. He thought that boxing, trying to outbox Dillian Whyte, or trying to outbox Deontay Wilder, although he won the fight, the judges didn't give him it, blah, blah, blah. I thought maybe it's going to be a new style, I'm just going to bulldoze him. I never actually thought that maybe he has to do that now. And that could be something that could work in Dillian Whyte's favour in this fight.
He changed a few things in the second and the third fight. He was like when Wilder loads up, and he does load up, but the thing is he covers ground really quickly. So although I think people see the shots coming, a lot of heavyweights, they're just not quick enough to get out of the way. And what Fury was doing in the second and the third fight was actually the moment he saw Wilder was going to pull the trigger on the right hand, he just shut the space right down. And so he actually, if he did get hit, he didn't get hit at full extension. And there's one shot where you see the shockwave ripple down his muscular back, but it's like that probably saved him, because if he'd have taken that shot half a foot back, he might have got knocked out.
And that was the one of the adaptations. Adaptations. That's the word.
No worries.
He made that from the first fight, because the first fight when Wilder was coming from far out and trying to land the big shots, Fury was stepping back and leaning to his right all the time. And the times that he was knocked down, he was caught kind of high in the back of the head.
Wilder started to aim like almost down and right, didn't he, to catch him on the way down?
He wasn't aiming that way. Wilder was aiming that way because he knew he was doing it. So that was something that he changed in the fight. But that shows a clever fighter and a clever team to be able to make them kind of changes.
Yeah, because I think Whyte has to, and from people I've spoken to, I think the game plan is to make this as rough a fight as he possibly can. But it's quite interesting because Mark Lyson was announced as the referee 2 or 3 days ago. He's a great guy, Mark Lyson, and a very good referee. He's not the biggest of guys, and I think this is going to be a very, very physical fight. But he does tend to dock points for holding. Like I was just looking down his kind of record, like hitting after the break. He's pretty strict on stuff. So if there's any messing around, so I think we could see maybe some head clashes in the fight, because Whyte will be kind of leading in, trying to make it as rough. He's the shorter fighter. Fury's got a bit of scar tissue from, of course, the Otto Orlean fight and a couple of other fights too. So this, I think, could get really, really messy, but I think it will be, if they get close, it could be really exciting.
Yeah, look, that has to be the style of Dillian Whyte. He's not going to outbox Tyson Fury. No. He has to get on his chest, but and he's an exciting fighter, and no doubt he's very, very brave. And while he's there, he'll be winging and he'll be trying to win. And he's always got a chance because he can punch. And he's wild at times as well.
Which is sometimes harder to read.
Yeah, unpredictable at times. But I feel like he gasses in fights as well. There's periods in fights where he has to have long breaks and almost like a round off here and there when he's put a lot of energy into a previous round. And I think that when he does that, I think Big Fury will be able to punish him. And look, I think it's going to be an exciting fight. I really do, and I hope it's not a quick blowover for either guy. I hope it's a long fight that we all get to enjoy, and I think it will be. But the whole the lead up to this fight, when there's big fights, normally I change my mind once or twice on who to think I'm going to win, and I haven't changed my mind once in this fight. I always just have Tyson Fury as the winner in this one.
I think general consensus is that. Can we just get a quick sort of show of hands from all the fight fans? Who's going for Tyson Fury in the fight? Yeah, see a lot of you. Anyone going for Dillian Whyte at all? Yeah, brave man. You might be. Yeah, but listen, I guess that is representative of what the odds will say and what most people think, and rightly so. When you look at the styles and you look at, they will say a good man, big man beats a good little man. White's not a little man, but he's the smaller guy in the fight. And when you look at what Fury's negotiated with Deontay Wilder, they're a different sort of fighter, Wilder and Whyte, but they make similar kind of mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, like, what you were talking about and relating it to Whyte there and his style, I think when I was talking earlier on about him having to have big breaks, I think that's because he everything he throws is
so
hard.
Much, yeah.
There's nothing. Tyson Fury will go through, he'd touch you with his jab and he'd throw nice shots and
he'll
hit
faint you to death
and
as well.
he'd faint you to death. Everything Dillian Whyte does, he's trying to kill you. Every single shot that he throws, and that just requires a lot of energy. And I feel like that when Fury's hard to hit as well for a big man. Yeah. And although he's standing in front of you a bit more now, as we've seen in the last two fights.
He catches and slips and shoulders and
it's really. It drains your energy so much when you're hitting thin air.
You said that Kiko was hard to hit clean.
Kiko was, when I fought Kiko twice, he was very hard to hit clean, and people just have him as this kind of come forward, marauding fighter. But he's almost like, he's this big, you look at the shape of Kiko, he's a big hump on his back.
Yeah, like a tortoise shell almost, yeah.
Like a turtle, he looks like. And
does actually look like a turtle, yeah.
But everything glances off his head and the top of his head. And hard to hit clean.
Yeah.
Dillian has a little bit of that about him coming forward, but when I talk about Fury can make people look silly sometimes. And when you're hitting thin air, not even hitting arms or the body or anything, when you're throwing wild and hitting thin air, it's so energy draining. And I feel like that could be an issue for Dillian as well.
If Fury's been down 2 or 3 times when they've sparred, I guess the assumption is as well that he probably came into those spars quite heavy, because we know he does put on a bit of weight in between fights. But at the same time, he knows that there is a danger there of sorts, and he can't just be complacent. Do you expect him to sort of box early, and then if he starts to find those breakthroughs, a little bit like he did against Wilder, fight a little bit more in the middle and give the crowd what they want to see?
I spoke to him, and I had done an interview with Tyson for BT, and I asked him, like, what do you want to do in this fight? What's the tactics? Because trying to be a rational boxing fan, you think that you're just going to move around and outbox this guy. But he said, I'm going to stand, I'm going to walk straight to the middle of the ring, and I'm going to push this guy back, and I'm going to outfight him. Wow. Who knows if that's going to be true or not? But if I'm his team, I'm saying you need to just jab ahead of this guy
just
for the
2 or 3 rounds.
First few rounds
Anyway,
and then maybe put it on him. And we don't know what he's been training like. We don't know about the effects of having to lose so much weight as heavy. It's got to take its toll at some point.
Yep.
And although he's still pretty young for a heavyweight, Tyson, I think he's 32.
But it's miles on the clock rather than age, isn't it?
Of course. And that's what he's done to his body previously isn't great. And it's got to catch up at some point. And that'll affect how he fights. That'll affect if he's able to get up on his toes and move around for 12 rounds. Or does he maybe just have to now stand and have a fight because his feet aren't as good as the ones were. But whatever the case, I feel like he wins the fight. Even on the inside, I feel like he's clever enough to tuck up and block and counter. I feel like whether the fight's done in close quarters or at distance, that Fury should win.
His fight to lose, it pretty much every
I think, and I know a lot of people will be, on Dillian Whyte's side and Kate. I'm not on any side. I'm just saying it how I see it. Yeah. That's just the way I see it, and there's nothing that I've seen that's made me change my opinion.
Yeah. So it would really have to be a kind of shot from the gods that Whyte lands, and I guess the more risks that Fury takes, the more opportunities he's going to give to Dillian. Because Whyte wants him to come and fight. So if Fury does want to come to the centre ring and fight, then that's going to
suit Dillian Whyte.
It suits Dillian Whyte. It gives him the best chance that he's got, whether that's 20%, 30%, whatever it is. It maximises his opportunities. Yeah. Because I think everyone's in agreement if Fury just decided to box, move, he's probably going to win over 12 quite comfortably. But you also, there's an added pressure, isn't there, of being in front of however many thousand there'll be in the arena in the stadium that night. You've got to make something special happen. You can't just go and stink the place out. Because if he did what he did against Chisora in the second fight, that would not go down well.
Well, do you know what? I don't. Some people would think like that. I don't think he cares.
Really?
I think he just wants to win the fight. I don't think he feels like he has to do anything spectacular. And I know, and I'll kind of relate that to one of my own fights with Quigg.
Yeah.
And it was a grudge match, and it was 20,000 people in the MEN. You know, a quarter of what's going to be, or less than a quarter of what's going to be at Wembley that night. But it was a hostile environment, and people were expecting a war. But I was winning the fight, and it was boring, and I didn't care. I just wanted to win the fight. And I think Fury's of that similar sort of mind.
Because there's so much on the horizon for him in victory, it's just about getting the win and moving on.
I think that's the case.
Because it's been a long old road, isn't it?
But I'm
really?
saying, but when I'm saying that, I don't think it's going to be a boring fight.
No, I don't.
I really don't. I think it'll be well. I think it'll be points deducted. I think there may be knockdowns.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a cracking fight.
I think a classic, yeah. The more I think about it, the more I think you're right as well. And of course, all roads lead to the Undisputed Heavyweight Championship of the world, which in this era we haven't seen. And of course, it all relies on what happens with Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk. Were you at Spurs Stadium for that one? I can't remember whether you were there. No. I mean, that was a hell of a night. And I guess the second night Joshua has come unstuck as a professional, but it was, I think, it was weird because actually in person it was a closer fight than I think people saw it on TV at home. But what chance do you give Joshua in that rematch in the summer?
I think he has a chance, and I think there's a number of factors as to why. Obviously, what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. You've just seen Usyk come out of a war zone to go into a training camp. I'm sure he has family and friends who are left back in Ukraine that he's got to be thinking about daily. How do you prepare for a fight of this magnitude with that going on in your home country? I really don't know. So that'll affect Usyk certainly in the fight. I feel like Joshua got it wrong tactically in the first fight, and everyone will be. I'm sure most people will agree with that he was just too standoffish. He was trying to outbox what is, in my opinion, one of the master technicians, like an unbelievable fighter. I just thought the tactics were really bizarre.
No imposition of his size or anything.
But so, the tactics have got to be this time to be a brute and push him down and hold on to him and throw him around.
A bit like the old Joshua, a bit more raw and a bit more.
That's what he's got to do. But it's easier said than done. And I think the tactics maybe from AJ may have been because Usyk got his respect with a couple of decent shots early on in the fight. And when you've walked on to a couple of nice, clean, crisp shots that you were thinking maybe going into this fight, this guy's a cruiserweight, he shouldn't be able to hurt me, and he does. That changes your approach.
He dictates so much with his feints and his lead hand, Usyk. I was talking to Fabio Wardley, he did about 40 rounds with him over 2 camps, and he's a novice pro, but he's pretty good, Fabio, and he's an intelligent guy. And I said, what did you know about Usyk after the 40th round that you didn't know in the first round? And he said, not every feint is going to be something, and don't overreact. And he said, how Joshua reacts to the first feint is going to dictate the fight. And so I was watching for that. First bell went, Usyk went to the centre ring, and he gave him this big twitch, and Joshua completely overreacted, parried, stepped back, and I just thought, already he's now leading the dance. And
he said that to you before the fight?
He said before the fight, yeah. And it was the first thing that happened in the fight, and instantly I thought, Usyk's almost one up here, and with a fighter that thinks as quickly as he does in the sort of chess match of boxing, once he's a step ahead of you, he can get 2 steps ahead of you, and then Joshua was forever chasing, not getting the instructions in his corner because there were mixed messages, and it was always a case of playing catch up then, wasn't it? It was
all a bit mad in the corner as well, and the advice seemed strange for me looking in from the outside, but thinking about it rationally and with hindsight, I think that maybe Rob McCracken, who's taken a lot of criticism about that fight, but maybe the advice he was getting, I think, going out for the 11th round was make this guy come to you when in my opinion, he was well behind. So you need to go and chase the fight. I think McCracken thought that if you go and chase this fight, you might get knocked out. And I think that's something, I've thought about that after I've seen it, and I've thought a little bit about it, and I think that was maybe a wise decision from McCracken, because if he gets chinned, then this rematch isn't really, maybe it doesn't even happen.
No.
And then he goes off the rails. So
And the bigger picture as well, it would be a massive shame because the fight we all wanted 3 years ago, we kind of almost forgotten how much we wanted Joshua versus Wilder because it just didn't get made. And you know, now of course the fight that we all want, or for around 6 months, would have been Joshua and Fury. Those two fights supersede pretty much everything. But of course, if Joshua doesn't get past Usyk, I think you know, Fury's a much safer bet against Whyte than Joshua is against Usyk. But we might never get those two fights.
It would be a shame. There's so much variables, isn't there? There's so many different things that can happen that we expect. I think a lot of people expect Usyk to win this next fight, but I'm not so sure about that. I think that a lot of people expect Tyson Fury to win this next fight against Dillian Whyte. I'm sure, not sure, you can never be sure in this game, but I'm confident that he will. But again, it wouldn't surprise me that much if Dillian Whyte won, but just because it's a heavyweight division and they're big men. So who knows?
We could get Joshua Whyte too. We could get.
It could be
Joshua Fury,
Usyk
Fury,
Whyte.
Usyk Whyte would be mad.
You know what I mean? That came from nowhere.
Imagine that 18 months ago, you'd have got no chance.
Yeah, but that could be the next fight we're all calling for.
Yeah, Kiko Martinez was world champion 2022, mate. Anything's possible.
Yeah,
anything is possible.
Madness.
Bring back Carl.
Well, amazingly, bring back Frampton. Amazingly, we've done 45 minutes, guys. We're going to throw to you for some Q&A in a minute, but just want to say a massive thank you to all of you for coming out here. Make sure you download the We Love Sport app and of course check out the fight in a venue near you on the 23rd of April, Wembley Stadium. Carl Frampton, thank you very much. Great to see you, mate.
Thanks everyone. Thank you.